Now it's time for us to look at the app creation process. As developers, we have this temptation of just going straight to our edit text to our IDE and start putting together our application. So usually we have this app idea, or someone gave us an app idea, and we just go straight to our computer and we start coding away. That is indeed the fastest way to fail at app development, right? Because what happens is we don't have a clear definition of what is it that we want to build, right? Even if it is the simplest application that you are about to develop, it's a good idea to take the time to go through the whole process of understanding what is it exactly that we're trying to build. Okay. So, app creation. The first thing you need to do is to define the app goals. Now, in order for us to define the app goals, we need to first understand what is it that we are trying to build. Who is our audience, like people who are going to be using this application? What are we trying to accomplish with this application? And so many questions that we need to answer. So this will allow us to go from idea to a final product. So here's a few questions that you need to ask yourself. The first one would be, for instance, the goals of the app. What are the goals of this app? What is this application going to accomplish? Okay, so once you answer that question, then you have to answer yourself, what does the app do? What are the main things that the app should do? So the idea here is that an application has to do or solve one problem. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Which will answer the question, what does the app do? And then you have to think, what kind of information are you trying to give to the user? What kind of information this application will have? Now, is this application, for instance, going to be a newsreader application, a weather app, or a to-do application? What is it? What kind of information this app will have? And also you need to look at what is it for? What is this app for? What is it going to be used for? Okay, so once you start defining these goals, you'll start understanding exactly what is that needs to be built. Instead of going to your IDE and start coding, which is usually the temptation, you need to ask yourself these questions. That way you have a better understanding of what you're trying to build. And it may seem very trivial at this point, but believe me, this is a very important step to follow. Next thing we need to look at is user goals. Now, for user goals, what we're trying to accomplish here is to answer more questions here. So the idea here is to figure out what are the goals that we have for our application. So what will be shown on the screen of the app? How is the information going to be shown? That will be another question. For instance, you can say how many relevant items will be shown at once, right? So let's say if a Twitter application, we can say the question would be, well, what is considered a relevant tweet that a user may be interested in, right? So if a relevant tweet would be a political tweet, that means then that will take precedent over anything else that the user may be able to see in the application, okay? So now you're digging deeper into understanding the goals of the application. What are the things that are important to make this application what you're envisioning it to be? For instance, you could say the other question you ask, how will the user navigate from point A to point B to get to where they are supposed to get? So defining your user goals will further define the application functionality. The next thing we need to look at is product goals. Now, when we talk about product goals, we are not directly talking about the users, people who are going to be using the application. Now we're talking about the product, in this case, the app, right? That will be the product. So what is the goal that you have for your product, for your application, right? And we understand that it can't all be about users. So the app is a product and it needs to make money or elevate the brand you are trying to build. For instance, here's a few product goals. The first one could be to reach 50,000 downloads in 3 months. So that's one of the product goal. The next one could be, we want to make sure that this app at least earns $10,000 gross in 3 months. Or we want to release a version to our board members in the next 6 weeks, or release the first version to the public. Okay, so those are product goals. And then once you define those, then you have some sort of a map of the product that we're trying to build here. Because now we're not just talking about the user, we're talking about what are our expectations for our product. So we're trying to find the goals that we have for ourselves and the application as a product. Because when you're building applications, you're building a product, right? People will be using it for to solve certain problem. But also as a product, you want to make sure that you either understand whether you want to make it free or you want to make it a premium product, which means the user will have to pay. And there are different ways you can make your product premium, right? You can have in-app purchase where people download it for free, but then you have in-app purchases, or you have items that you can get users to buy in order to enhance their experience. Okay, so those are important things to think about as well, even though you're not doing directly for the user, but you need to think about it. Although, if you think about if the application is going to be premium, meaning they have to pay, that will affect the users, right? Because that means users will need to pay a certain fee in order for them to be able to download and enjoy the application. Now, it's important to also understand that these requirements shouldn't get in the way of the app development or the app development process, or let it define the application. But it's a very good point to keep in mind and go through in this app creation process here. The next step is storyboard and flowchart for the entire application. What this means is we need to put things into paper, because now we need to visually start understanding the pieces of what constitutes the whole application. Okay? So what I usually do, I roughly create screens that represent what I'm trying to accomplish, so to give myself some ideas on the flow of the project that I'm trying to build. Okay, so there's different ways to do this. Most people, you can use software, but I usually prefer using pen and paper. The idea here is to create a BOP, which is Build Apps with Paulo, which is my brand, my website, that allows users to look at all the courses that I offer. It's a very simple concept, but again, I have to go through the whole process to understand what is it that I am building, right? So for instance, I could have a login where users can log in. The moment they log in, they can go ahead and look at all the courses in a list. And when they click on a course, they may be able to see details of that course. If they don't have an account, they can of course create an account. So it's a very simplistic way of putting things here, but you understand now, once I have this, I can have a mental idea of what is it that I'm trying to build. So I can start looking at branding, the colors, the icons, the user interface, the user experience, navigation, user goals that we talked about, product goals, app goals. So the idea is always to focus on the user. That is why we create these applications. And of course, you can also wireframe everything. You can choose from dozens of options for wireframe tools online. There's stencils, omnigraphical, balsamic, etc. If you just go online and type in wireframe tools, you will see a lot of them. So my suggestion is just pick one and try it out and see if that helps you. But don't get too bogged down with tools. Like I always say, piece of paper and pencil, it always works. One thing I would like to emphasize is to remember to take the time to go through this process, as this is crucial and is what differentiates a good app from an excellent app. So take the time to understand exactly what is being built. So we talked about app goals, user goals, product goals, storyboard, the whole application, okay? So if you do this, it may seem like a lot of work, and it is, but it will pay off in the end, because you can then visually see the entire application unfolding before your eyes, and that is a good thing, okay? Perfect. So I'll see you in the next video.